Mark Rogers, TV talking some Florida football, and we do so each and every time with David Waters from Gators Breakdown. And want to let you know that you check out Gators Breakdown on SEC Breakdown. They're on YouTube. I'm Mark Rogers of Mark Rogers TV. We're joining forces to a certain extent, so we're going to provide you with a ton of SEC content there at SEC Breakdown. Follow us on Twitter as well, and like us on Facebook at SEC Breakdown. David doing a great job with the Gators stuff and the complete SEC story. So, Dave, we're going to talk DB tonight. It's not just been this last draft class, but it's been 2 years running that there's been so much talent leave this football program from the defensive backfield. So while everybody from Gator Nation applauds on draft night, you got to think, wow, we got to replace these guys. And this particular draft class, it's Tease Tabor, it's Quincy Wilson, Marcus May, three exceptional players. So maybe we'll tee it up with cornerback and kind of your outlook on the way things are going to look this year.
Yeah, Mark, it probably would be best if we kind of just look at this from who's currently on the roster and who are the freshmen that just came in that could make an impact as well. So we'll look at the guys who maybe went through spring practice and what we saw from them, but we know the incoming freshmen from this 2017 signing class will make an impact. So if we start at cornerback, you definitely got Duke Dawson, who is going to be the cornerback number one for this Gators defense, and Chauncey Gardner will be the other outside cornerback to start the season, I believe. Duke Dawson played nickel last year. You and I were kind of kidding around. If opposing offenses had to pick on somebody in the Florida secondary, it was probably going to be Duke Dawson, but they didn't really have a lot of luck, much like with Tease Tabor and Quincy Wilson. Duke Dawson definitely held his own in the nickel position, a good playmaker there. He's going to slide to the outside, and Athlon's magazine just came out, and they have him second team All-American on their All-American list. So that's high praise for Duke Dawson, who has yet to play a game out there at the outside cornerback for the Gators. But he's got the tools. When you play nickel, you kind of got to be you have to be a little more athletic than some of the outside guys sometimes, because you're asked to cover some of the running backs. You're asked to cover some of those slot receivers who are a little more shifty in their routes and route running. So Duke Dawson held his own there, so he gets the shot to be the main guy. But it's going to be interesting to see what happens with Chauncey Gardner outside the other position. He played safety mostly last year as a true freshman, a little bit of nickel when he needed to. But Chauncey Gardner against Iowa in the bowl game had a pick six and then had another interception. I believe he had a pick six in the FSU game as well. So Chauncey Gardner made plays at the end of the season when he had a little bit more experience as a true freshman. So I believe he will start the season outside the opposite Duke Dawson, but he may not stay there because Florida's got some true freshmen coming in that could push for playing time. And I really think these coaches would like to see Gardner at nickel and playing a little bit of safety as well, because he can be a playmaker more in the middle of the field than if he's stuck to one side of the field.
So when you talk about the guys that could be pushing for playing time out of this 2017 class, who do you have in mind there?
Two guys jump off right at you when Florida signed these guys in February. Christopher Henderson and Marco Wilson. Marco Wilson is Quincy Wilson's little brother from Fort Lauderdale. He's going to mature a little bit, but already an elite athlete and what he can bring to the field. As far as he's got a knack, for being in your face as a cornerback. He's going to push for playing time day one. He's going to step on the field, and he's got the genes. We know his dad played for the Hurricanes. His brother played for the Gators. Now he's the third Wilson in line to come do something. But Christopher Henderson, also, Florida was a big battle in Miami down there and was able to get Christopher Henderson when it all boiled down to the end. And another guy as a freshman who can come in and step in right away. Florida needed big-time cornerbacks in this class, and they got it with Henderson and Wilson. But you also, Brad Stewart can come in, Sean Davis. What Florida can do, though, there's got some versatility with those kids, and they'll be able to play safety as well, like Brad Stewart and Sean Davis. They may project to be more safeties, but they're versatile enough to come and play corner. But the two guys I'm really looking forward to maybe push Chauncey Gardner to where he can move inside a little bit is Christopher Henderson and Marco Wilson.
Yeah, and both of those guys out of Florida rate as top 20 cornerbacks as evaluated by 24/7 Sports. Got a couple safeties when you talk Marcel Harris, you talk Nick Washington, guys that saw the field considerably in 2015. Harris on the field for 9 games, and for Washington, he played in all the games, excluding one in the 14-game schedule with the bowl game and the postseason play in 2015. But they both really emerged, especially Marcel Harris, leading the team with 73 tackles this past season.
Yeah, Marcel's going to be that in the box safety that, you're seeing a lot of hybrids, hybrid safeties that come and play in the box, maybe another outside linebacker if you want to label him that way. But he's a guy who's going to come in the box, and when Florida needs some help in the run game, stopping an opposing offense's run game, Marcel's going to be that safety that comes in the box and gets his head in there and lays the wood. I mean, he is not afraid to hit. Florida's kind of had a lineage of those guys, going back to Keanu Neal a couple years ago, and now Marcel Harris stepping in that role too, and being able to scare opposing offenses with the way he can lay the wood. So Marcel Harris is going to be the in the box type. And while Nick Washington doesn't get the love fair because he doesn't really make the flashy play, the reason he's starting is because Chauncey Gardner, as I mentioned, back in the Iowa game and FSU game, he made the big plays, but Nick Washington doesn't give a big play up. He's the kind of consistent guy that won't necessarily give up the big play. He's Mr. Consistent, and as I mentioned, he may not show up on the stat sheet a lot, but he's going to be there in position to make a play. It took a while for him to get in that role. He's a redshirt senior, but he bided his time. He's now coming into his own, and he's even kind of surprisingly on some NFL draft boards as well, as people really like what they see from Nick Washington. So there wasn't a lot of intrigue or a lot of surprise going back to spring ball when you saw Marcel Harris and Nick Washington line up at safety. But as I mentioned, you're going to get some young guys in: Brian Edwards, Donovan Steiner, guys for freshmen that came in this past class, but guys who've already been on the roster too. Look out for Jawan Taylor, Quincy Linton. See if those guys, where they get passed up by these freshmen, or can they separate from the freshmen and finally get some playing time as well? That's going to be the interesting part, is how much can these freshmen that Florida highly recruited, highly sought after, how much can they come in and impress the other guys who are right now our backups and will really have to, keep those freshmen at bay if they want to see some playing time as a Gator.
Alabama, LSU definitely stacked in the defensive secondary. Georgia really good with a couple outstanding players in Dominic Sanders and Malcolm Parrish. We know Florida's going to be good in the secondary. Are they going to be as good, are you pretty comfortable in saying, as they've been the last few years, which means maybe the best unit in the country, or definitely one of the top 5? Or are they more in that top 15 place that they definitely are going to hit?
Mark, you have to expect some drop off, and that's more for respect from the guys who left: the Vernon Hargraves, the Keanu Neals, the Marcus Mays, the Tabors, Wilson, and you have to respect what those guys did. And to say the guys that are on the roster now, they won't drop a beat from those guys, well, you're kind of doing those guys a disservice as well. So, these guys were highly recruited. They're going to play well. Florida, it's hard to go back. Maybe 2007, it wasn't a terrible defense, but that's probably the last time you have to go back and find when Florida had a non-Florida type defense. So, then that year, 2007, they had a hard time, getting off the field on third downs and just keeping drives going for opposing offenses. I don't think Florida's going to fall that far off with these DBs. These guys, like as I mentioned, were highly recruited. They're going to step in. They got confidence. Florida wants to wave that DBU flag more than Virginia Tech, and more than LSU, more than Ohio State, and Bama's and their recent reputation with defensive backs. These guys are coming in wanting to wave that DBU flag, so they're going to come in with some confidence, and these guys, they'll be good. Health will be an important issue. I mentioned Florida may have to depend on young guys, but not necessarily because of the guys aren't good that are going to start. There may be some injuries, and you got to have some depth in the SEC. You need it, and we've seen Florida go 3 or 4 deep with defensive backs they've been confident in. So these freshmen can come in, shore up some defensive depth that with drafts that we talked about the last 2 years. Florida needs to get some depth with these young guys. So it may take some time. They may start the season a little slow, those young guys. But as long as they stay healthy early in the season, I think if by the time we come around the end of the season, we'll see, Florida still kind of waving that DBU flag.
Man, 2007, that's when Tebow, of course, won the Heisman, scored a zillion touchdowns, and they still lost 4 games and gave up like 42 points to Michigan in the Capital One Bowl.
And couldn't stop LSU at LSU. I think Jacob Hester, I think it was fullback. They couldn't get him off the field. So maybe that's the last time everybody says that Florida defense wasn't a Florida defense. But I don't think the drop off will be that much for this defense.
Not a vintage group that time, but it's been really good ever since, despite some offensive lackluster performances from year to year. So this is what you do. If you're watching us on SEC Breakdown, keep it right here. You're in a great spot. You'll see some more SEC content from myself and from some others to round it out and bring you the best from the SEC. If you're watching this on Mark Rogers TV, you need to jump over to SEC Breakdown on YouTube. You'll get your fill of Florida football plus a lot of other SEC content. Join David on Gators Breakdown on YouTube. And also, if you want to listen to it, it's on iTunes. It's on SoundCloud as well. David, it's always a good discussion. Appreciate it, man.
Thanks, Mark.